Why would Elvis Presley, the legendary king of rock and roll, walk away from something so final, so life-changing, without a second glance? His divorce from Priscilla was official, yet one detail remained eerily unresolved, a mystery that left even those closest to him baffled. For years, Priscilla carried a secret about their split, a truth so unexpected that when she finally revealed it, fans were left speechless. What was Elvis really thinking? And why did he refuse to take that one last step? Stay with us, because the answer might just change everything you thought you knew about their love story. Priscilla Presley's decision to leave Elvis wasn't born out of anger, resentment, or a loss of love. In fact, quite the opposite. She never stopped loving him. She had spent years by his side, mesmerized by his presence, his charisma, and the way he could command a room with just a glance. To the outside world, they were the ultimate fairy tale couple, but behind the glamour, Priscilla was grappling with a deep, personal struggle, one that she could no longer ignore. From the moment she entered Elvis's world, Priscilla's life was no longer her own. She was barely a teenager when she fell into his orbit, and from that point on, every decision she made seemed to revolve around him. What she listened to, what she watched, even how she dressed, it all came down to what Elvis wanted. She wasn't just his wife. She was part of his carefully curated universe, molded to fit the image he envisioned. And for years, she accepted it, believing it was simply part of loving a man like Elvis Presley. But over time, something changed. The girl who had once been swept away by a rock and roll fantasy started to feel like a shadow of herself. Priscilla realized she had never truly lived for herself. Her experiences, her dreams, her desires had always been second to Elvis. She wasn't just losing pieces of her identity. She feared she never had the chance to fully discover who she was in the first place. And as much as she loved him, she knew she couldn't stay trapped in a life where she had no control. Leaving was never going to be easy. Walking away from the man she had loved so deeply, the man who had shaped her world in ways no one else ever could, was a choice that weighed heavily on her heart. But deep down, Priscilla knew that if she didn't step out of his shadow, she might never truly find herself. And so, she made a decision that would change both of their lives forever, one that would set the stage for an even bigger mystery that no one saw coming. Unlike the messy, headline-grabbing divorces that often plague Hollywood, Elvis and Priscilla Presley's split was surprisingly peaceful. There were no public outbursts, no dramatic courtroom battles, and no bitter accusations hurled across tabloid pages. Instead, their parting was marked by something far more unusual: mutual respect. They had shared a life together, one filled with passion, challenges, and undeniable love. But when it came time to go their separate ways, they refused to let resentment overshadow what they had once meant to each other. In her memoir, Elvis and Me, Priscilla offered a rare glimpse into their divorce, revealing how both she and Elvis made a conscious effort to keep things civil. They had seen too many high-profile relationships fall apart in the most painful public ways, and they were determined not to become just another tragic Hollywood story. There were no cruel words spoken, no attempts to blame one another for what went wrong. Instead, they focused on what mattered most: their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. For both Elvis and Priscilla, Lisa Marie was their greatest priority. No matter how their marriage had changed, their roles as parents remained the same. They agreed to share custody, ensuring that Lisa would never have to choose between them. It was a rare, almost unheard-of level of cooperation, especially for a couple living under the microscope of fame. And it was this shared devotion to their daughter that kept them connected even after their marriage was officially over. But there was something even more unusual about their split, something that puzzled those closest to them. While the divorce had been finalized, Elvis himself never picked up his copy of the divorce papers. It was as if he refused to acknowledge the finality of it all, as if a part of him still clung to something that hadn't quite been lost. What was holding him back? Was it denial? Regret? Or was there something even deeper at play? That's where the real mystery begins. Why would Elvis Presley, a man who had lived his life in the spotlight with every detail scrutinized, simply ignore something as significant as his own divorce papers? For someone who was meticulous about his career, his performances, and even his public image, this seemed uncharacteristic, almost as if he was refusing to acknowledge that the separation had truly happened. Divorce, by definition, is meant to mark the end of a marriage, a clean break between two people who have chosen different paths. But for Elvis, it seemed that finality was something he couldn't fully accept. Priscilla Presley later hinted that Elvis never truly processed their divorce on an emotional level. On paper, their marriage was over, but in his heart, he struggled to see it that way. To him, Priscilla wasn't just an ex-wife, she was the woman who had stood by him, who had known him beyond the stage persona, beyond the fame. Their bond was deeper than legal documents, and perhaps that's why he didn't feel the need to acknowledge them. It wasn't about paperwork. It was about something much bigger, something more personal. Some who were close to Elvis believed that deep down, he thought they would find their way back to each other. Despite the changes in their lives, despite Priscilla's efforts to carve out her own identity, there was a lingering belief that what they had was never truly over. And in some ways, they never fully let go. Even though Priscilla had moved on, even though life was taking them down separate roads, there was always an unspoken connection between them, one that Elvis may have believed would lead them back to where they once were. Even after their divorce was finalized in 1973, Elvis and Priscilla continued to talk regularly, their conversations filled with warmth, familiarity, and, at times, longing. It was as if their relationship had transformed into something that defied labels, no longer husband and wife, yet still bound together in ways neither of them could fully explain. The papers might have been signed, but the emotions, the history, and the love between them had never been so easy to erase. And perhaps that's why Elvis never felt the need to pick up those papers, because to him, their story wasn't truly over. Even after Elvis Presley's passing, Priscilla never spoke of him with anything less than admiration and deep respect. While their marriage had ended years before his tragic death, her connection to him never truly faded. Time and distance may have changed the dynamic between them, but the way she spoke about him in interviews and public appearances made it clear. Elvis Presley was not just a chapter in her life. He was the defining force behind so much of who she had become. His presence loomed large, not only in the world of music and entertainment, but in her own personal story. In her memoir, Elvis and Me, Priscilla described Elvis as the greatest influence in her life. He had shaped her in ways she never could have imagined when she first met him as a young girl. He was more than just a husband. He was a teacher, a protector, a larger-than-life figure who carried an undeniable power in everything he did. She had loved him deeply, and though their marriage had ended, the impact he had on her remained forever. His voice, his energy, his way of seeing the world, it all stayed with her, woven into the fabric of her memories. Elvis wasn't just a global icon. To those who knew him personally, he was something even more extraordinary. Priscilla often spoke of his immense generosity, his effortless charm, and the way he could captivate a room without trying. He was a man who lived with passion, who gave selflessly to those around him, and who left behind a legacy that could never be replicated. His presence was magnetic, unforgettable, and even after he was gone, those qualities never faded. To Priscilla, he wasn't just the king of rock and roll, he was someone whose spirit remained embedded in every part of her life. Perhaps the most intriguing thing she ever revealed was that she still felt his presence, almost as if he had never truly left. She spoke of moments when she could sense him, as if he were watching over her, guiding her in ways that defied explanation. Whether it was nostalgia, love, or something more mysterious, Priscilla's connection to Elvis extended beyond the limits of time and space. It was a bond that even death couldn't break, and one that left lingering questions about the true depth of their relationship, questions that only she may ever fully understand. Why didn't Elvis Presley, a man who had always been so meticulous about his career, his finances, and his image, take care of something as simple as picking up his divorce papers? Was it an oversight? A sign of his busy, chaotic life? Or was it something far more revealing? Something deeply personal that hinted at emotions he never fully confronted? For a man who had everything, there was one thing he never seemed to let go of, and that was Priscilla. The divorce may have been legally binding, but in Elvis's heart, did he ever truly believe it was over? Many have speculated that Elvis's reluctance had everything to do with love, the kind of love that doesn't fade with time or circumstance. He had spent years with Priscilla by his side, shaping her world as much as she had shaped his. Even as their marriage fell apart, that bond remained intact. Could it be that, deep down, he still held on to the hope that one day, somehow, they would find their way back to each other? That their love story wasn't really meant to end, but rather to take a pause, one that could be undone at any moment? Or maybe it wasn't about love at all. Maybe it was about pain. The idea of finality, of truly closing that chapter of his life, may have been something Elvis simply couldn't face. Divorce wasn't just a legal matter, it was an acknowledgement that the dream he once had with Priscilla had slipped away. To accept that reality, to hold those papers in his hands, would mean admitting that the life he had envisioned with her was truly gone. And for a man who had spent his life in the public eye, playing out a carefully crafted version of his own story, maybe that was one reality he just couldn't bear to confront. But here's where things get even more intriguing. Priscilla later admitted that their emotional bond never truly broke, not even after his death. She spoke about feeling his presence, about knowing deep down that something still connected them beyond the physical world. If Elvis had such a hard time letting go in life, could it be possible that he never truly did, even in death? The questions surrounding his refusal to pick up those papers linger like an unsolved mystery, one that continues to fascinate fans to this day. So, what do you think? Was Elvis still in love with Priscilla until the very end? Was his refusal to pick up the divorce papers a sign that he never truly let go? Or was there another reason behind this mysterious decision? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what you believe really happened. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the King's most intriguing personal stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable story about Elvis Presley. Your support helps keep these fascinating discussions alive, so share this video with fellow fans, and let's keep the conversation going.